Margaret Hathaway are a husband and wife couple from Maine with a keen interest in food and community. They run a farm in Gray. They're also the couple behind two well-known cookbooks, the Maine Bicentennial Community Cookbook and its sequel, the Maine Community Cookbook. And they're with us here on 207 to talk about their latest project. Great to have you here. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
What is it about food, before we get into the specifics of this project, what is it about food, Margaret, that brings people together in a way that nothing else does?
I think when you're sharing a meal with someone, your defenses are down in a way that is just, it makes it very easy to have a meaningful conversation with someone. I think food just lends itself to forming community.
Well, you guys looked around not too long ago and you were troubled by the fractured, polarized world that you saw around you, including right here in Maine. And you decided to do something about it. So you started up this series of dinners called Community Plate. What is the idea behind this, Carl?
So Community Plate is the organization, and the suppers are called Story Sharing Potluck Suppers. So it's a sort of traditional community potluck, but with three very intentional elements. So we ask people to bring a recipe that has maybe a story behind it that they can share. We use story prompts to facilitate conversations with people. At the end of the supper, we have storytellers who get up and perform. So it's like kind of like dinner and a show. And then after the supper is over, we collect the recipes that people brought, of the dishes they brought to the supper, and we make like a mini community cookbook that then gets distributed to everyone who comes to the supper.
You had the first of these community suppers last summer in Lubec. How did it go?
It was amazing. It was, you know, sort of a proof of concept. We tried it out in a space that was far away, but we had a friend who was in that community who helped organize it. And it was beautiful. People who had known each other for years had conversations that they had never thought they would. Some storytellers were impromptu and just got up and told stories about their grandparents, and about one man sitting next to me talked about serving in the Navy 30 years ago. It was just wild what people decided to share.
Yeah, and there was a woman who said to our friend, Lubec was an interesting mix of sort of seasonal residents and year-round residents, and there was a mix of that at the supper. And there was one woman who said that she'd never really felt part of the community until that night. And so when we hear those kinds of things, get that kind of feedback, it's really meaningful to us, and it lets us know that there's a real hunger for this kind of community.
You've now had 8 of these dinners around the state.
Yeah.
What do people say at the end of the evening?
We do a little survey at the end. We ask people for feedback, and one of the questions we ask is, did you make a meaningful connection with someone at the supper who you either didn't know or didn't know well? And 100% of the people that respond to the survey say that they made a connection with someone. And also, people feel more connected to their community. We get little vignettes. At the last supper we did in Bodenham, there were 2 women. One complimented her on her pie crust and said, "I've never had luck making a homemade pie crust." And the woman said, "Well, why don't you come to my house and I'll teach you how to make a pie crust?" And these were just two complete strangers I'd never met before.
And that must have made your day.
Amazing to hear that.
It's made our week.
Yeah.
So it's pretty simple. What you ask people to do is bring a dish, although they don't have to. It's not mandatory. No. And you ask them to get up and share a story, although again, it's not mandatory. But do most people get into the spirit of it and do those things?
Yes, and I think there are a lot of people who come into the room hesitant to share a story, and by about 15 or 20 minutes into the event, they're connecting. It's hard not to.
Yeah. Most of the story sharing takes place across or at the tables, and then we have practiced storytellers who we've kind of organized, and it's kind of like Margaret overheard someone at the Last Supper say, it's like the moth, only better.
Because there's food.
Because there's food.
Yeah.
So everything's better with food.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
People who want to get involved in these things should just sort of keep their eyes and ears open. Your next supper is going to be March 9th in Orono, and then after that, March 28th in Brunswick, and then you're looking at one in May in Millinocket, and there will, of course, be more to come.
Our goal is to do one in each of the 16 counties over the course of the year. So we're looking at you, Holton, looking at, Fort Kent.
All right, we've got more information on this on our website. Carl, Margaret, thank you for coming in. This sounds like a really interesting project that you've undertaken.
Oh, thanks.
We
Thanks
appreciate
for having
you
us.
being here.
Hopefully we'll see you at a supper soon.
Yeah, I know, and they said I wouldn't have to cook anything. That's how nice they are. More information on Community Plate and these storytelling and sharing suppers, just head to the 207 section of our website or app and stay with us. Back with more in a moment.